Welcome to Music Outlook LA, the podcast which highlights the independent artist, whether they are a musician, vocalist, actor, actress, live audio or in-studio engineer, or a videographer, photographer. I'm your host, Will Kimsey. Each episode, we'll look at the gigs of the independent artists, from the venues we play to how we set up and break down, the gear we use and why we use it, and the info we hope you'll find useful as we all make our way in the entertainment industry. Music Outlook LA is brought to you by Kim Z Entertainment LLC. Go to kim-zentertainment.com to find out what they're doing for the independent artist. Kim Z Entertainment LLC. Independent entertainment done independently. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Music Outlook LA. I am your host, Will Kimsey, and my guest today is the guitarist, bassist, and Chapman Stick performer, geneperry. I met Gene, an independent musician, currently who is performing with his band, the Pali Music Collective. Let me get my words together here. I met him through his brother, Doug, who I have known since the 80s. And on occasion, Gene will sit in with Doug's band, Goat Rodeo, and play either bass or guitar. We haven't gotten him to play the Chapman Stick, but I also play keyboards for Goat Rodeo. And you'll hear more about that in upcoming episodes and who knows where else, but we're all gigging. And again, Gene's band is called the Pali Music Collective. But today, we're going to discuss his gear, the gigs he has, and we'll see what info he has to pass on to any up-and-coming musicians, other indie artists, what have you. And ladies and gentlemen, this is geneperry. So again,
thanks so much.
How you doing, man? How you doing? I am so sorry. We had some tech difficulties on my end, but they're resolved, they're fixed, and we're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, it was a quick recovery. I suppose that in and of itself has been my greatest little miracle.
Yeah, tell me about it.
It's all in the recovery. It's like I found so many different ways not to do it that how could I possibly find one more?
I mean, you could spend hours setting everything up, making sure that point A goes to B to C, that all your virtual audio cables are connected, everything's downloaded, framing is right, so all you have to do is just click and go, and there is still always something you have to figure out. And
usually like a AAA battery or something somewhere, right?
Yeah, something somewhere that has to be fixed.
Or something.
Exactly, something that has to be fixed. So just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
Who is geneperry?
Well, thanks so much for having me on, Will. It's a lot of fun to talk to you. It's nice to finally get time where we're not like, in between sets and like trying to shout out chords over an unruly crowd or an unruly band. But thanks so much for having me on. And I have been looking forward to just getting to know you better as well. And so who am I? Well, as far as music goes, I started playing when I was about 12 or 13, and there was a music shop up in the Palisades, and it was called Amazing Music. And Patrick Hildebrandt was the teacher there. We were friends. I'm still friends with Pat Hildebrandt Jr., so we played in bands together. And just a great bunch of people and a great place to learn to play music. And Steve Smart, who I've played with for a long time, took lessons there. And then so did Daryl Goldfarb. He's the guitarist in the Pali Music Collective. So it is my great fortune to play with these guys I've known and who've inspired me all along. And so that, is kind of the recent chapter that we're into right now. But let me tell you a little bit more about school. I guess, I was noticing that you went to Berkeley and I went to Santa Monica College and I got a degree there. And that was an exciting time. So, was going to school and working in restaurants and occasionally working out at DreamWorks, which became Electronic Arts. but that was kind of the day gig. And then, the Incline got signed and we got to travel and do a little bit of that for a while. That fell apart, unfortunately, but, stayed in touch with Steve a little bit. And I did stay in touch with Miles as well. We did a couple gigs these past few years.
Right.
But I really took a little break from music just to, settle in and got married, raised kids. And now it's a much more kind of semi-pro arrangement. Yeah. So.
Right. Cool. So we're in the middle of still recovering from a pandemic, as you know. So I know I was working rather steadily before that. And right now we're starting to pick back up again. Like I said, I'm playing with your brother. And we're going to make that work out real well. Got a nice set of songs going. And I look forward to being able to jam with you next month coming up.
Yeah, that's going to be cool.
That's going to be a fun little private thing we're doing there. But speaking of pandemic, what kind of gigs or what gigs did you have prior to it, if you could touch on it, and what are you doing right now?
Sure. Yeah. So I was living in Pasadena at the time. So I was renting a room, and you've got one of everything in Pasadena. I had, I don't even know if this is appropriate to talk about, but like the first person that I rented from was this ultra liberal woman who lived alone, and she was, she was like far on the left. And then I rented a room from this other guy who I'm pretty sure was in the adult industry, and he had a couple of rooms for him. It was a big house. I had and I didn't really put two and two together, but as I started to realize, oh my gosh, so I had to get out of there. But I just it was on total ends of the spectrum while I was, went through a change in my life where I was living up in Pasadena. And during that time, then the pandemic happened. And, I've been moving around, trying to get settled in. Annie and I were just beginning our relationship, and so we were getting to know each other, and it was romance in the time of the pandemic. And now as far as music goes, I wasn't quite as I wasn't in one place. And so, you have to move around a lot. And I never really became confident with breaking down my rig and setting it back up again and doing it quickly. I always kind of struggled with that. So I got really intimidated. And it really fell off in terms of playing creatively. And only more recently in the past 2 years, when Steve Smart came back into town, did I really consider, playing out again, really.
Right.
Outside of just playing solo Chapman Stick gigs. So not a very productive time for video, not a very productive time for playing out. I worked on the repertoire. I did a lot of experimentation with pedal boards, which is just, the more I kind of look back, as just kind of wasted time. I mean, it was it just feels like junk food in terms of my musical evolution.
Right. So has how did the pandemic then affect the way that you get your work done? So what adjustments did you have to make, I guess, during and now post-pandemic?
Well, I suppose the silver lining there is that it was terrible during the pandemic, and it was,
it was.
We were, I was working for, working for the federal government. And, Annie was working at a hospital, and it was just a scary time. We didn't know what was going to happen at that time, so a lot of our energy was really, focused on just surviving. But I know that things that were really important kind of came to the surface.
Right.
So, things it's family and finances and friends and, these relationships, work, and all these things, get kind of tossed around, and you really got to kind of shake it off. And I'm, getting to that point right now where I've addressed all these kind of lingering issues, both personal and professional. And so trying to then focus on, building a brand, or trying to, expand repertoire, or to network, or to sustain, ongoing gigs, all of those things, you figure out what's important. And, so far this year, what I've found is that I've made more videos this year, in the past 2 weeks, than I made all of last year. And so much of that was just self-inflicted. And it was just like, okay, I just have to make one every day. So, I'm like, I was making one every day up until about 2-3 days ago. Now I got to get back into it because I don't want my New Year's resolution to be my to-do list for the first 2 weeks in the year.
Exactly. I know I've got some, and I'm trying not to just do resolutions. I'm just trying to just make a fresh start on things and just go for mine, just plug on ahead and plug forward.
Better
but
done
I did
than
mention
perfect.
Chapman Stick, and I know you, because I played with you. You do bass, you play guitar. I've seen you break out a mandolin. But I really want to talk about that Chapman Stick, and if you can tell us what it's all about. What is it? I had a roommate in college who dabbled at it, and I spoke to him not too long ago, and he put the stick down. He said he just couldn't get it right for himself, something about the pickups or something or other. Because this was, 84, 85 when he was playing it. So I'm not too familiar with its history. But he went back and just stayed on bass. And he's out gigging in the New York area. So, with local bands out there. So I was fascinated, though, by it. First time I saw it, and I see this big thing with 20 strings on it or something or other. And what the bloody blue, and there it is. And there it is. There's a Chapman Stick. So tell us all about the stick.
Yeah, well, thanks for the introduction, and definitely put in some time and effort with the Chapman Stick. And I had the great opportunity to really get to know Emmett Chapman in kind of the last 10, 15 years of his life.
The creator, right.
He was a great, father. He was, he was a thoughtful person. And when I asked if we could do an event, he said, and I said, will you come to it? And I tried to make the event as close to his house as possible. And I think he really, I hope that deep down he appreciated that. But the idea was that I just had this great opportunity to meet with him, a couple of times over 10 or 15 years. And we got to, it was just a really special time, because we had access to this gentleman who had created the instrument. So anyways, let me stop gushing. We focus up here. So the Chapman Stick it started out as a 10-string instrument.
Okay. So
the instrument has 10 strings, and it's divided actually into 2 sets of 5 strings. So you have what's called, what we refer to as the left hand or the bass hand, and the melody side or the right hand. And so the right hand is tuned in ascending fourths, and the left hand is tuned in descending fifths. And so, when you look at it from an angular level, it works with the shape of the hands, the way it lays against the fretboard. And this was all very much taken into consideration when Emmett designed the instrument. Now, over the years, it evolved. It took different forms. It had, these improvements. The scale of the instrument was increased. He tried different materials, polycarbonate, graphite, many different types of, hardwood. Woods, bamboo, and so much of it was unique, and so much of it was really just free form, instrument creation, done on this very small scale, and then so much was ventured. I mean, he ran it out of his living room, and
right.
And so the instrument is played with 2 sides. So it's basically like a left side and a right side. And you can run that through a bass rig and a guitar rig, or you can just run it into a PA and play it more like a piano. So, there's a number of different ways that the instrument can be utilized, and he intended it to be that way. And Emmett was big into improvising. And so the instrument lends itself to, just free form expression, and you can cross the hands over. So you can hold it a different way and use this hand in different places. You can play it towards the center of the instrument. It gets a different feel, a different resonance. And So then, they made 12-string versions of it. The most recent iteration of the Chapman Stick is the railboard. So this was something that, kind of he did kind of as, it was kind of as like, his dismount, right? Where they all hold up the tens. And so basically you can see on this instrument, if you're looking at it, there's little frets here. And so this is actually, there's a separate piece of metal that goes inserted into the wood. But in the instrument that he made called the railboard, it was actually cut with a CDC machine so that they were railed into the fretboard. And it was all one integral piece of metal. Mm-hmm. So, a brilliant design, 4-way trusses, dual flaps, 3D bridge. There's a number of different patents that he created. So, the instrument was the ultimate kind of expression of his, manufacturing genius. But also he was he was big into the 60s. And so if ever you've seen him play, it's really like free-form, train of thought kind of playing. And so that's a little bit about the Chapman Stick and Emma Chapman.
All right, great. So I guess this is an instrument that if you, and I'm referring to one of the gigs I saw on a picture you had posted on Facebook. If you have a small number of instruments, and I'm referring to the one where you were with the string players, you playing the stick would fatten up the sound, if you will, for the other instruments. You are not only playing a bass line and covering the bottom, but you are comping chords as well in many cases. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, you are. And I suppose one has to be very sensitive of is the attack. And so the left hand, it's a much more immediate action. So when you're fretting a string with your left hand and you just kind of pluck a C string, that left hand is at rest. Mm-hmm. That left hand is at rest, and the right hand really says, okay, I'm putting the string into motion and you're going to fret the note now. In some cases, you can just use the left hand to thump down on the string. Right. But you have to do so with a greater bit of pressure because of the size of the string and the energy that you're looking to produce with this motion that comes straight down on the fretboard. It's so much easier to use this, right? So you use your right hand to pluck it into motion. Now with the Chapman Stick, the action is so low, it hovers just right above the frets. And so it's just waiting to grab the sound and to push it out. And so you have more of an attack, almost like a harpsichord. And so you have to be very mindful of when that left hand comes down, and you have to really mean it. And if you're going to have to move quickly, you're tuned in fifths, not in fourths. And so you have to really anticipate all these changes because you're using, like, imagine if your keyboard piano keys were like, a third of the size, like all of a sudden now, right? Like you have to really, like, you're playing with little mouse hands, right?
Yeah, I can relate to that. Anybody who's ever been a keyboard player, if you ever had a Casio, this is what Gene is talking about. I'm not talking about the ones that they recently make that have nice full-size keys. I'm talking about the first sets of Casios that were only so big. Yeah. I still have mine somewhere. I think it's in storage. And the keys are like, I mean, you can see right here how big the keys are on that. But take a piano key, and I get it. You shrink it to more than halfway down.
That's very much what it feels like. And so, so like covering the bass side of the instrument, I really have to. It's different every day. Yeah, every day I'm playing the instrument. So in some I was I'm playing with a guitarist and a drummer right now. So really, it is I need to be in that bass mindset, and everything else is optional. So. Right. I really have to encompass that, and I have I'm actually playing an instrument called the NS stick, and that's basically like tuned in fourths, which is more like a bass, and so that instrument is it's kind of a similar arrangement. It's 2 sets of 4 strings. Without boring you to tears about it, like it's basically you can send it to 2 different sides, 2 different amps, same kind of arrangement. where was I going with it? The bass side. So, if the expectation is bass, then I'm much more inclined to like, hey, I can just kind of hang back and really try to listen to what the drummer's trying to tell me, the story that the drummer's trying to tell me, and can work with that, help to build that story, see if there's a way I can embellish it. And then what I love, certainly about working with the drummer that you're very like intimately familiar with is you can say, did it go too long? Is it too fast? Am I doing it again? And and so Steve and I are almost like too comfortable with each other. So that's been a real joy.
Great. Doing this now in video and trying to get everything down in 30 minutes is going to be a challenge for me, and I will learn as I go. So I'm just going to skip ahead to a couple of things. There were some other things I wanted to ask.
Sure.
But one thing I think I will do is extend an invite for you to come back so we can pick up on some of the things I didn't get to. But let's go right to your gear. We've already talked about the Chapman Stick, and you've described a couple of them so far. I see you're using a Rode mic right now.
Yeah.
I'm using one. I love them. I've got this one, and I've got the video mic, which is on top of that camera there. So forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, if you see me looking in different directions. I've got basically 3 screens going all at once here. So in regards to your gear, aside from the Rode that I see and the guitars that I know you have, because I know you've got a Fender bass, I've seen it.
A couple basses.
What other gears? We're not shifting car. We're not shifting gears in the car here. What other gear do you use in wherever, from video to audio, your guitars, your mics? What are you using?
So it all started out with guitar, and I remember having a guitar and then getting a new guitar, and I was so excited about that. And then I got a pedal, and then I got another new amp, and I was like, wow, now I have 2 amps, a guitar, and a pedal. And then I got another guitar, and it was like, oh, like I have all these different sounds, and then I have one that I never use. And so as I've kind of gotten older, I these instruments take on like different identities, and I try not to let the other one know too much about the other one, There's like I've got like 4 basses that are just like sitting in a garage, and I love each one of them. I could never, and like Eric's got one of them, and I'm like, dude, that's a 74. Like, you even know, like we replaced the knobs on that. It's got this awesome neck, and I tease him, and it's a really hard bass to play. It takes a lot of energy, but so gear. With regards to like where it starts and where it ends, like I'm pretty content with like having enough gear. So this is kind of like my mantra now, is like I want to be able to make a video, and I want to be able to have decent sound, and I want to have confidence doing it, and so for me, there's like, I'm like getting, as I get a little older, like I'm more like, especially with like the stuff with TikTok, it's like so informal, you just kind of go for it. Like, and now I don't think too much about it. Just make the video, enjoy yourself, be yourself. And then that way, like the expectation is just so much lower. Like I get to be myself. And, you don't want to talk about politics or family. You want to kind of like have something that like, people enjoy talking about, right? Like know your audience. And so for me, it's Chapman Stick players, but also some, musicians and things like that. So with regards to gear, I like to not focus on the gear. I've gotten really good in iMovie, and I've gotten really good in Streamlabs OBS. I've gotten really good in in GarageBand. Now I tried to move to Logic Pro, but I ran into like system settings, and there's a little bit of resistance. And that was like 2.5 years ago. So I may like, maybe I have a New Year's resolution, but I'm trying different stuff. So like I was using an AKG P120, I think.
Okay.
Right, so you can see I've got this one here. This one is great. It's kind of awkward the way it clips on, and that's just me because was never really big into audio. But so for me, my first thought was go USB and make it easy. So like I don't want to have to transmogrify it into, from an XLR or a quarter inch, and then I'm going to get confused and discouraged. And I'm like, it's USB. Like, just you plug it in. Guess what? The headphones plug into the microphone. Even I can't mess that up, right? Like, and so that was so exciting for me because then it just made that part easy.
Yeah.
So now I get to focus on either making the video, and I still haven't I kind of struggle with having like the mic and then also, the Duet 3. Like, oh, well, now I have multiple inputs and the Mac can handle that. That's like third quarter stuff for me right now. Right now, I'm able to like put out videos every day, try to be moderately amusing, not too annoying, not talk too much about myself. I try to focus on other stick players and maybe things of value or quote the Freehands book. But in terms of gear, okay, so I use a MacBook 2017, super towards the end of its life, but I love the feel of it, and it's been faithful to me, so I use it. Now, I don't like the way USB plugs go in and out. Like, I will say that USB 3 has that, and I think of all the time I spent plugging in USBs like the wrong way, and like I want those like 7 minutes back, but like really and it's so convenient that the new USB-Cs just go in either way, but they also slip out just as easily.
Yeah, they do.
And so you'll see in a couple of years, people are like, "Hey, we liked this technology, but it doesn't like there needs to be another like little. Imagine like 2 little ball joints towards the end where it kind of just like fits in snug, because right now." The pushing and pulling, those that's just not going to last anyways. That's my prediction. In terms of like a rig for, I have a big monitor, I have a fancy mouse. I use a Duet 3 Apogee with the little kind of, landing tray there. As far as gear live, okay, so I have to run 2 different kinds of rigs. So I have to run a rig into a PA if I'm playing as a soloist, or I have to run a rig into a guitar and a bass amp if I'm playing in a band. So those are generally the 2 applications. So in the former, I have, I use a Temple Audio pedal board, and I use a Source Audio collider pedal. So that's the delay reverb pedal that I like. And what I like about that pedal is that it has a great deal of functionality just afforded to you on the 2 top pedals. So on the reverb side, you can hold it and get this kind of infinite sustain and then play underneath it. And then on the left side, you can enable tap tempo, and you can tap in tempos with the delay, which is like so cool, like without having to hook up an external MIDI pedal or something like that. So in terms of like using like something on the melody side, which is generally the hand that's telling the story, I'll use like a little bit of ambience like that. But in the left hand, really, I just run it straight into this small. It's a small pedal that's a 4-band mixer, and it's Elite Electronics, Elite American Electronics, I think, and it's actually pretty cool. I'd love to show that to you. The pedal. I'm going to go grab it.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm showing you the pedal board now. And this pedal that's in the towards the bottom there, that is actually a 4-channel mixer. So the inputs on the side are a 1/4 inch, but also take XLRs. So like for a microphone, right? And then you've got 2 1/4 inch inputs on the top, which don't have preamps, but you can use that for your, if you've got a stereo mix for coming out of your phone or something. But it also has 2 pedals on the top. And so it actually has built-in reverb, which has a shimmer option as well. And then you've got tap tempo delay on 1 channel. So it's also like a multi-effects unit. It has built-in limiter. It has a built-in 1-knob compressor. And it's got EQ, and then it's got different configurations for these 2 pedals. So the way I use it is one of the pedals turns off the reverb on all the channels, and the other pedal mutes it. So for me, with a 2-channel instrument I have two different signal paths, so it's kind of a pain to figure out how that comes together. So it's so nice just being able to mute everything. And then I've got, a tuner, other things on the pedal board. Here's the collider I was talking about. And then this pedal runs basically, it's a, I don't know, you'd probably, if you were using like a guitar, you could maybe have like one side that went out to like your Fender Princeton, right? And you could have another side that goes out to your Marshall, but the idea is that it splits the signal.
Okay.
And so what I do is this pedal is going through one side, and then it's not going through the other side. So when I want like more ambience, I just kind of lean it to one side or the other.
Okay. And here I thought I was doing something by being able to choose sounds on a keyboard and make sure that I'm in the mix correctly. Wow, that's just a lot that you guitar players go through. I mean, I program the sounds. Most of the sounds that I use on the keyboards are factory made, so I don't really have to mess with too much other than maybe the oscillation here and there, or raise or lower the octave on the board, because when I'm playing, I will, in my left hand many times, play the chord change, and in the right hand, I might do a string line or something on the top keyboard, or split the keyboard and do bass in one hand while I'm doing chords in the right. So I definitely understand what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. I'm just amazed that it's gone from the tiny little Boss pedals that I've seen so many guitarists use in the 80s and the 90s, coming up from Berkeley and everything else, and they would have a rack of Boss pedals, and each of them was a different color and it did a different thing, and you either bypass the pedal or tap it and activate it. And I'm just looking at that board that you just presented, and okay, he's taking that big wah-wah thing and he turns it to the right and it does one thing, turns it to the left and the other, and steps down on it like an accelerator in a car and it does something. Wow. I'm just amazed with a lot of the things guitarists do, and to hear and see you go from the bass, then you pick up a guitar, then you pick up a mandolin, and I watched you on a couple of videos do your stick. I'm just like, Gene Perry has it going on, you guys. Well, I've got it going.
Thank you. Well, I think that. Thank you for saying that. I think that I really do genuinely enjoy stringed instruments, and I think that with the keyboard instrument, there's so many different ways you can play it, and there's so many. When MIDI becomes that language that you become fluent in, you can combine sounds, and when you split your keyboard, it becomes another instrument. It becomes entirely a different instrument, and like the way you play. A percussion sound might be very different from the way you'd play a flute sound, or if you'd play a single note, or whether you'd be playing two notes at the same time to make it sound like a keyboard playing a flute part. Like maybe that's the desire, or maybe you overdub that and play it a certain way. And so as a keyboardist, I've always been kind of envious of just like just like the flexibility, the expandability, like just the way you can build on things and the way you can construct sounds, and how like written music in the past like 300 years is basically written for you guys and gals.
Yeah. I mean, that's something else I just want to talk about, because you've given me some ideas for when I have you back to discuss. And one of the things we'll talk about is how music has evolved from the 17th century all the way up to now. And, you're no longer in a point where if the king didn't like what you did, you weren't going to get beheaded. That is how they did it. I mean, those were the times that Beethoven, Bach, and the others lived in. They were the town musician, and the king decided, or whoever the ruling monarch was, decided what was and wasn't music. So that's how that is. So with just a couple of minutes left, I'm just going to go right down to the very last one. And I asked this last question of all of my guests, and I like to phrase it like this, and it's, what's in your car? In other words, what do you listen to when you're out and about?
Well, I've rediscovered the Modern Jazz Quartet. So for me, it's a band of like rhythmic just scholars. Mm-hmm. And each one of them provides this different role with such expertise that you'd really just think it was one person's imagination of beautiful jazz music.
Yeah.
It's conveyed with such like what's the unconscious beauty where they just know the other person's going to do this thing. There's going to be a build-up. There's going to be a cue. There's going to be a key change. Whatever it is, it might be unexpected in the moment, but it's anticipated and always part of this like portrait of jazz. And so for me, like Mom always had that kind of going on in the background. And I've just come to realize and rediscover them as kind of individuals and as just the greatest jazz band to me that just defines what, great American jazz is.
All right. Mine just happens to be Yellow Jackets, but we're gonna pick that up on another one. And we're gonna end it right
I love
here.
Where we're going with
this. There we go. We're gonna end it right here with this.
This podcast is both brought to you and produced by Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. Music Outlook LA is a copyrighted broadcast of Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. The views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily those of Will Kimsey or Kimsey Entertainment, LLC. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or any other use of this product without the express written consent of Kimsey Entertainment, LLC is strictly prohibited.